Excited to be your host for today's discussion that is on privileged access security. Okay. Uh, Currently, I am working as a full time privileged access management instructor. Okay. I have worked with more than like 100 of candidates, trained them, helped them with certifications and their job hunt. Okay. I have done a lot of corporate trainings as well with some reputed clients. Okay. I also worked with a company as a PAM engineer. There I worked on multiple projects, including the implementation and the enhancements. Right. So, yeah, that's all about my journey. Okay. Today we are here to talk about privileged access security. Okay, what is this privileged access security? Why are we securing these accounts here? Before we talk about this privileged access security, before we understand what is this privileged access security, let's understand that what is this privileged access? Okay, why are we securing these privileged accounts here? Okay, so privileged access is any account which has higher abilities in the system. Higher abilities as in that account can be used to log into the system to perform some server level changes, install any new software, add a new user, or remove any user from the system. Okay, so any account that has some higher privileges, some higher permissions in the system than a normal read only user is something that we call as privileged access here, privileged accounts here. Okay, you might have noticed this, that when you join any organization and you want to install some software in your company's laptop, you are not allowed to do that with your local id there, with your user id there. And in that case, you raise a request to the support team, they log into your system remotely and they download that software for you, right? So how come they are able to download that software but you are not? This is because they are using an account which has some higher privileges, which has some higher permissions in the system. Okay. And since these accounts have some higher privileges here, these accounts becomes a target for the attackers. Okay, attackers, there are some attackers that might try to have access to these accounts. Okay, the accounts that can make server level changes or have some higher abilities, these accounts can become a target for the attackers and they might try to access these accounts in the system. Okay, so this is why the security of these accounts become important. All right. Okay, so moving forward, there are some types of privileged accounts here. Okay, let's discuss about them as well. Let's understand what are the different types of accounts. Okay, there are basically two types of privileged accounts in any environment. Okay, the first one is this interactive accounts. Okay, interactive accounts or human accounts also. Okay, now as the name says, interactive accounts. Okay, the accounts with which you interact. Okay, you use those accounts to log into some system to perform your work used by the humans, right? You are typing in the username, you're typing in the password, and you are using that account, right? How do you log into your system, your laptop? You use one username and password. How do you log into your gmail? You use a username and password to log in there, right? So every single account with which you are interacting here, you are typing in the username and the password manually, is something that we call as interactive accounts here. Okay, and if let's say you are using the accounts, you are doing some modification with that account, some policy modification, some password change, right? You are doing some task with the account, you are doing that yourself, right? So you are using that account, you are interacting with that account. This is something that we call as interactive accounts here. Okay, now we have some example for this interactive account. The first example is super user account. If you know what a super user account is, super user account is any account which is the most powerful account within the entire system. Okay, like you have root account inside Unix system, you have this local admins account inside Windows system, you have this sysadmins for database system, right? So any account which is the most powerful, most privileged account inside the server, inside this system, is something that we call as interactive account, and this is an example for super user accounts here. Okay, and every system is going to have this account, this super user account. You have this account created, and let's say if there is some patching that needs to be done on the system, or any policy needs to be changed on the system, you use these super user accounts for that. Okay, let's say if you want to do modification, you have to do some patching on Windows, you will be having a local admin account for that system, and you will be using that account to do the patching there. All right. Second example for this is Active Directory domain admin account. Active Directory, if you know this, Active Directory is basically a repository for all of the resources within your organization. Okay, resources as in servers, the users, the privileged account, everything that you have within your organization, everything that you want to keep within the organization's network is stored within this Active Directory, right? And sometimes to manage this Active Directory, you create one Active Directory domain admin account there. Okay, and this account is something that is going to have the permission to access every single resource inside your directory. Okay, and not only access but can also be having the administrator rights over this entire Active Directory. Okay, so this is what we have as example for this interactive accounts, the super user accounts, and this Active Directory domain admin accounts. Okay, the second type of privileged account is this non-interactive accounts here. Okay, non-interactive means no interaction with the humans. So basically, these accounts are something that are being mapped in some application or some scripts. Okay, you do not interact with these accounts here. If you look at this first example, that is this hard coded credentials for this non-interactive accounts. Okay, uh, let's say you have a script. Okay, a partial script is there that has a functionality. Okay, and you need to push this functionality to like 100 of servers in one single go. Okay, and let's say you have certain time limit, you have to push this functionality to all of the servers, all of the 100 servers in certain time limit. Okay, for that you cannot assign this to your administrators, right? You cannot ask your administrators to manually log into each of the server and typing in the username and the password, and after that pushing the functionalities, right? This is going to be very inefficient, very manual way of doing that. Okay, and you might not be able to complete this in time, right? So in this case, when you have a lot of servers and you want to push the same functionality in the servers, in this case you write the username and the password within the script itself. The script is going to read this username and the password automatically, and is going to log into the target system to perform the functionality. Okay, so without interacting with the accounts, without manually logging into the servers, okay, you're just defining the username and password. You are allowing the script to read this, and you are allowing this to log in and push the functionality automatically. Okay, there is no human interaction here. The script itself is going to initiate the login to the system and is going to push the functionality automatically here. Okay. The second example is this services. Okay, services are basically created within the server, certain automatic tasks. Okay, if you see here, you have some services. Okay, so there are few services for every single software that I have in my system. Okay, these services are there to perform some automatic task. Okay, let's say if you are installing any application, that application needs to perform certain tasks automatically in the backend, right? It cannot depend on administrators or users to do that, because that application needs to run those tasks 24 by 7. You cannot, that application cannot wait for administrators to log into the software and run that task manually. Okay, so in this case, as soon as you install any software, the software is automatically going to create a service on the server. Like I have these services here for a lot of servers, for a lot of softwares in my laptop. Okay, created automatically. Okay, and these services are going to perform the task automatically here in the backend. Okay, so this is another example for this non-interactive accounts without manual login. Okay, without any manual intervention, human intervention, this services is automatically performing the task in the backend. Okay, so these were the two examples for this non-interactive accounts. Hard-coded credentials, where you define the credentials in form of some scripts. Okay, and services are created within the servers to perform some automatic task. All right, now in this privileged access security implementation, this interactive accounts is going to be the first priority. Okay, why? Because this type of credentials, for this interactive accounts credentials, the credentials are exposed to everyone, right? Every user has the password here. Passwords are distributed among everyone. Okay, so this can lead to password exposure here, right? That's why the priority is this interactive accounts here in any privileged access security implementation. Okay, these non-interactive accounts are also important privileged account, but for these non-interactive accounts, the credentials are not as exposed as these interactive ones. So the focus in this security implementation is going to be on these interactive privileged accounts. Okay, moving forward here. Now let's talk about that what are the risks associated with these privileged accounts. Okay, why are we securing these accounts? What happens if we do not secure these accounts? Okay, why are the companies these days so aggressively looking for privileged access security in their organization? Okay, let's talk about the risks. Okay, so the first risk, if you see here, privileged accounts are described as the keys to the kingdom, right? Let's talk about the Active Directory account. Okay, so this Active Directory domain admin account is something that is created on a repository. Okay, a repository which contains a lot of resources. all your servers are there, all your users are there, all your privileged accounts are there in that repository, right? And this domain admin account, this active directory domain admin account, is going to have the access to all of the servers, the users, and the privileged accounts there, right? You created this domain admin account, and this is going to have access to all of your resources there. Okay. Now, let's say if your directory, if your active directory has 10,000 of servers inside it. Okay. So this one set of username and password, this domain admin credentials, can be used to access all of these 10,000 of servers, right? And not only access these, using this account, you can have administrator rights over all of these servers. You can perform any changes on these servers. You can even decommission the servers, right? So this particular account, domain admin account of your active directory, is going to have this much capability in the system, right? This is how powerful a privileged account can be in any organization. Okay. And it is not like that you are going to have only one or two account in the system. There can be like multiple domain admins account. Okay. And if any one of these privileged accounts gets compromised here, you are going to put your entire system at risk here. All of your thousands of servers, all of your users account, all of the privileged accounts will be at risk here. Okay. So this is why the privileged accounts are described as the keys to the entire kingdom. If any one of the accounts get compromised, your entire system will be compromised here. It is acting as a key here. Okay, let's say we have one organization here called abc.com. Okay, so this is an organization and there is a user. Let's say John. John is a user and John is a Windows administrator here, right? Now let's say John joined this abc.com administrator as a Windows administrator. Okay. As soon as John joins this organization, John's ID will be created. Okay, John's ID will be created here. Okay, John is going to get a physical ID, that is, he is going to get a badge or a ID card here. Along with this physical ID, John is also going to get a digital ID here. Okay, what does a digital ID mean? Digital ID is a username and a password here. Okay, so let's say for this John, the username is John here and the password is XYZ. Okay, John will be using this username and password to log into his laptop. Okay, let's say he'll be using this ID to log into his laptop. Okay, he'll be using this to log into his Gmail here. He'll be using this ID to log into his payroll application. Okay, leave application. All the application, all the servers that this organization has here. Okay, HR application, right? So John will be using his ID, his John XYZ ID to log into his laptop, his Gmail, his payroll application, leave application, right? Now, since John has joined this administrator as a Windows administrator here, okay, John will be having some responsibilities, right? Being a Windows administrator, John is responsible to maintain the Windows server, right? Maintain all the Windows server that is there in this organization. Okay. Uh, do the patching of these servers, right? This is the job role for this John user here. Now let's say this company has a lot of servers here. These are some Windows servers here. Okay, now these servers are the servers which contain some sensitive information. Okay, so since these servers contain some sensitive information here, this company won't allow John to log into these servers using his directory username and password. Instead, what will this company do? This company is going to create one privileged account for this John, so that John can use as privileged account to log into these servers here. Okay, let's say this company created one privileged account called administrator. Password is XYZ. Okay, so now John will be using this username and this password to log into these servers, to do the maintenance of these servers, to do the patching of these servers, to upgrade these servers, right? And now, since this account, this administrator XYZ is a privileged account here, this can be attacked by the attackers here. The attackers might try to access this account here. Okay, so to prevent this, because the privileged accounts can act as the key to the entire kingdom, if anyone gets access to this account, they can access these servers as well, which contains a lot of sensitive information. Just to prevent this, we secure this account here. Okay, we secure this account. This is what this privileged access security is. We secure the account with a privileged access security tool. Okay, so this is how the accounts are secured in any organization. The users will be then logging to this tool and will be using this account to access the servers here. Okay, all right, moving back to the slide here. That was the first risk for us. Privileged accounts can act as keys to the entire kingdom. Okay. Second risk that we have is the accounts are not centralized. Okay, your privileged account needs to be centralized here. Okay, it should have a central repository. Okay, why do we need to have a central repository? So that the auditing can be done very easily, okay, in a more efficient manner here. Okay, let's take an example when your accounts are not centralized. Okay, let's say you want to install an application, okay, in an organization. Okay, for that you will need a server. To install any application, you need a server for that. Okay, now what will you do is you are going to raise a request to the server team so that they can build a server for you. Okay, the server team reviews your request, they create a server for you. Now, as soon as they create a server, they also create a built-in administrator account with the server just to maintain the server, just for some future maintenance task. Okay, so they also create a built-in administrator account here, which is going to be used by them in for future maintenance task. Okay, now once the server is created, they are going to hand it to you. You are going to install the application on the server, and As soon as you install your application, you are also going to create your administrator account within the application. Okay, so right now we have two administrator accounts on the server, right? One administrator account is created by the server team and one is created by you, right? One managed at the application and one managed at the server, right? Two privileged account in one server being managed at two different places, right? And if this is the process you follow, if you create different administrator accounts within one server, and let's say if I am an auditor in this organization and I want to see the activities of the privileged accounts, I want to track the activities, that what task they are performing, I'll have to go to the server to retrieve the server administrator account details. After that, I'll have to go to application team to retrieve the application server application administrator account details, right? So I'll have to go to different places to retrieve the details, right? And this is going to be very tough and very complicated process for the auditors. And there can be very high chances that the auditors might miss on some important details, right? That is why this is said that your accounts, your privileged accounts, should have a centralized repository. Okay, uh, a centralized repository for all of your privileged account, whether the account is created on server or on application or on the database. Every account should be there in one central repository here, and that is why this privileged access security is required. You can onboard all the accounts into one tool, into one repository, and the auditing can be done very easily. You just have to come to one single place and you can do the auditing of every single account, every single user. Okay, you can keep a track of every activity that is being there on your servers using your privileged accounts. Okay, so that's the second risk for us, just to keep a track of every single activity of the users. The accounts, the privileged accounts, should have a centralized repository so that the auditors can audit every single details of the users. Okay, moving on to the next risk that we have is access control and accountability of the privileged account. Okay, let's say if you are using a sensitive credentials, you should be accountable for your actions. Okay, when we do not have any security solution, any privileged access security solution, we simply initiate some connection client. Let's say I want to connect to some Windows server. In that case, I am going to initiate a remote desktop connection client. Let me just, okay, I am simply going to initiate this remote desktop connection client. I will have the IP of this, okay, the target server. I'll type in the IP of the target where I want to connect. Every user is going to have the username and the password of the privileged account. They are going to fill up the username and the password here, and they are going to connect to the target system using this remote desktop connection client. Okay, this is the process that we follow when we do not have any security solution, right? But let's say I want to initiate the connection. I simply initiated this remote desktop connection client. I typed in the IP. I filled up all of the details here. Okay. And yeah, am I audible here? Okay. And after getting connected, let's say I chose to do something unauthorized here. Okay. Let's say I shared some file from the server to someone. Okay. Or let's say I deleted some file from the server. Okay, I did anything which I should not do there, which I'm not authorized to do there. Okay, but once I do this, once I do all of these unauthorized activities there, there is no track of this, right? No one is going to know that which user has actually done all of these activities here. Okay, because I am using a privileged account to log into the server, right? And every single activity that is getting created, that is there on the server, every single log that you have on the server will be for the privileged account that I am using to log in. Okay, you will not get any log saying that Kritika has used this account to log into the servers and did all of these activities, right? I have masked my identity behind this account here. Okay, so this is not a very good practice here. You should not allow the users to directly initiate the connection using these connection clients. Okay, so that is why the users should be accountable for their actions. Okay, so that's why the security of the accounts becomes very important. The users should be accountable for their every activity, and that's why we implement some security tool, right? Let me just show this to you, that how can we avoid this direct connections here. Okay, let's say this John user is using this administrator account. This administrator is a privileged account here, and we secure this administrator account here inside this tool, inside this security tool, right? Before the security tool, John was simply initiating the remote desktop connection client and getting connected to this target server directly, right? This John user was directly connecting to this target server. Okay, but now since we have secured this account, this administrator account, we won't allow John to directly connect to this target server. Every time this John wants to connect to these servers, this John will be asked to log into this security tool, okay, where the account is secured. Once this user logs in here, okay, we stop this. We will ask the user to log in here. Once this user logs in here, this is going to create an entry saying that John has logged in. Okay. Let's say after that, okay, one more thing here. Let's say for the security of the accounts, we can implement MFA as well, that is multi-factor authentication. Okay, John will be typing in his username and password, that is John XYZ. Okay, after typing in the username and password, we can implement multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is simply another layer of security to your system. Okay, most common example you see is whenever you try to log into your banking portals or something, you when you enter your username and password, it will ask you for an OTP, right? And only when you provide the correct OTP, you will be allowed to log into the server. Okay, so for this security tool as well, you can implement MFA in this login process. Okay, you after entering his ID and password, you can enable MFA, and only after doing that, John will be allowed to log in here. Okay, once John logs in, okay, once John logs in, this tool is going to create entry for this user. Okay, we have different PAM tools here like CyberArk, Beyond Trust, Savant. Okay, so this is what we have here. Okay, different tools. You can implement any of the tools, right? The tool is going to create the entry for John. After that, let's say John tries to use this administrator account, okay, and log into this server. There will be proper audit logs created for John's activity. Okay, audit logs will be generated for John's activity here. Along with the audit logs, there will be some recordings as well. Okay, session recordings. Everything that John does on this server will be recorded, right? There will be a proper screen recording of the sessions that has been initiated by John. Okay, in this audit logs, there will be proper logs saying that John logged in, used this administrator account, and after using this administrator account, John logged into this target server. Okay, and after logging into this server, John did all of these activities here. Okay, so this is how we ensure accountability of the users. Every users will be accountable. There will be proper audit logs for every single user. Every time the user initiates the connection, the session will be recorded, right? So this is how you have, this is where you have the risk, and this is how you prevent this risk. You ensure accountability. You control the accesses here, right? Only the user which is authorized, only the user which is a valid user will be allowed to log in here using his username and password. Okay, we have some settings for that. Okay, and only authorized user will be allowed, and every time they do some activity, their activities will be recorded, text logs will be generated, and everything will be available in video format as well. Okay, so this is how you can the users can be accountable for their actions. You can control their accesses. Everything will be under control, right? Okay, let me just show this to you. Let's say this, you have secured this account, whether these are database accounts or service account or Windows account. Okay, whatever account these are, you once you have secured these accounts, for every single user logging into this tool, okay, and initiating the connection, their activities will be recorded by this tool. Okay, so yeah, we talked about the risks here, and how where do we have the privileged accounts and how do we secure them, right? Okay, all right, moving forward here, let's talk about the requirement. Okay, for any PAM solution, there are some requirements that we have here. When you are investing so much into a security tool, when you can have some expectations for that, from that, right? Because usually the cost of those tools are very high, right? So we need to know that what can be our expectations from these tools. How can these tools help us in securing the accounts, right? We have some tools in the market here, so let's discuss this. Okay, the first thing that we have here is managing the PAM accounts. Okay, and we can do this by rotating the passwords. So it is not advised to keep your password static, right? Keeping the password static for a longer period of time can expose the password, right? Your password might get exposed here. The password should not be static for a longer period of time, and using any PAM tool, you should be able to define the policies that in how many days you want the passwords to be rotated, right? You should have this ability to do. Okay, now this is something that your administrators can do as well. You can assign this to administrators. They will be logging into the servers, and they will be changing the passwords for the accounts, right? But Let's say if you assigned this job to the administrators will be logging into all of your accounts, and there can be like thousands of privileged accounts inside your architecture. Okay, so manually changing the passwords is going to be a very inefficient way. Okay, going to take a lot of time, right? So instead of assigning this to your administrators, you can have a privileged access security tool. Okay, the security tool can do the job for you. You can define the policy that how frequently the passwords should be rotated, what is going to be the complexity of the passwords. Okay, um, are there any upper cases, m- or any special characters, right? Minimum length of the password, everything can be defined using a security tool here, and the security tool is going to read all of the policies and going to automatically change the passwords according to that. All right, so this is the first thing that you get if you implement any security solution to secure your accounts. Okay, second thing that we have here is limit the access to PAM accounts. Okay, uh, limit the access or least privileged method rule based accesses here. Okay, what you can do is by implementing any security solution, you have the ability to limit the access. Okay, you can you can grant role based accesses to the users. Okay, if let's say there is an administrator in the organization, you can grant privileged accounts permission, the policies permission, the configurations permission, configuration files permission, okay, to the administrators. Administrators will be responsible to onboard new accounts, define the policies for these privileged accounts, do the modifications on the configuration files, right? So you can grant these set of permission to an administrator here. Okay, but let's say if there is a normal consumer who just wants to use the account to log into the servers. Okay, so for the normal users, only the privileged accounts permission will be there. They will be having the access to the privileged accounts only. Okay, but let's say if you have the auditor with you. Okay, auditors are there to do the auditing. Okay, they are responsible to keep the track of the user's activity, right? So for the auditors will be having the access to the audit logs, right? The session recordings, every single logs that gets generated for the users, right? Or auditors will be having the access to that and will be doing the auditing using that, right? They will be also having the access to the session recordings, right? Whatever activities has been done, it will be recorded by the security tool, and the recordings will be available for the auditors here. Okay, so this is how you can limit the access. You are not allowing every single user to access every single resource here. Okay, the users will be allowed to access the privileged accounts. Administrators will be having some different sets of permission, like the privileged accounts, onboarding new accounts, defining the policies, changing the configuration files, right? Auditors will be having some different sets of permission here, that is checking on the audit logs, checking these recordings that are there, right? So this is the thing that we get. The next thing that we get from any security solution is audit trails. Okay, there will be audit trails generated for every user's activity. Okay, audit logs will be there. Every user which is using the account, let's say this is John, this user wants to use this administrator account. For that, this user will be logging into this security solution. Okay. So for John, there will be an activity log created, audit log will be created saying that John used the administrator account to log into this Windows server. And after logging in here, John did all of these activities. Okay. Let's say there's one another user here called Kritika. Kritika also logged in here. Okay. And Kritika is using some other account to log into the servers, right? So for Kritika, there will be different audit logs created. Okay, every single user is going to have their separate audit logs created and their sessions will be recorded as well, right? So along with the logs, the proper sessions will be recorded for every single user here. One more thing that we can get here is MFA, dual factor authentication. MFA is basically multi-factor authentication here. You can have this MFA to add another layer of security in your authentication process. Okay. Uh, you have seen this in a lot of servers. After typing in your user credentials, the server is going to ask for an OTP, right? And only when you type in the correct OTP, you will be allowed to log into the server, right? So you are going through multiple factors of authentication. So similarly, if you implement this security tool, you can also enable this MFA just to add some extra layer of security in your authentication process. Okay, let's say if this user is logging into this architecture, you can enable MFA here. MFA can be enabled here. So after entering this user's username and password, this user will have to go through one another layer of security. Okay, either by entering some code, some OTP, right? And only after providing that, the user will be able to log in here. Okay, so that no other user can simply use this user's ID and log in here. Only after providing this correct MFA, the user will be allowed to log in. Okay, so this is how secure your accounts will be when you have this security solution implemented. You everything is being recorded, audit logs are being generated, the passwords are being rotated, right? Let's say if you want the passwords to be rotated after every 30 days. Okay, so after every 30 days, the passwords for all of your account, if you have like thousand of accounts, for every thousand account, the passwords are going to get rotated. Okay, after every 30 days here. Okay, or whatever policy you have defined. If you define the policy as 60 days, the password is going to change after 60 days. Okay, so these are the abilities that you get here. You enable MFA for some extra security. You rotate the password so that the password does not get exposed, right? You have audit logs generated, you have session recordings, right? You are limiting the access. Let's say this John is an administrator, so John will be having the permission to access the privileged account. Along with the privileged account, this John will be having the access to policies, the configuration files. Okay, so John will be having the access to all of these information, right? Uh, John will also be having the permission to access the audit logs, right? System health. Okay, because being an administrator, being a Windows administrator, this John user is responsible to check on the system health of the servers, right? That whether the servers are working fine or not. Okay, so this is what an administrator is going to have here. Okay, but let's say if there is a normal user here. Okay, let's say Kritika is a normal user here. Okay, When Kritika tries to log into this security tool, for Kritika, only the privileged account will be visible. Okay, rest of the information will not be visible for Kritika. Okay, so this is how you are limiting the accesses for different user types. Okay, moving forward, the next thing that you achieve after implementing any security solution is session management. Okay, it takes two parameters here. The first one is session monitoring. Session monitoring is again monitoring each and every activity of the users by generating text logs, by recording their sessions, okay, keeping a track on the users activities. Okay, session isolation here means preventing the data overlap. Okay, data overlap between two sessions. Okay, let's say if there is user one, okay, let's say the John user is here. Okay, John is logging in here on the security tool, and John is using this administrator account to log into this server here. Okay, now on this server, let's say John is writing some sensitive details here. Okay, John saves some file here, he might be writing some sensitive details or something, right? Now let's say we have another user, Kritika is also having the access to this administrator account. Kritika logged in here, and Kritika is using this administrator account to log into the same server. Okay, now when Kritika logs in here, this file that is saved by John will not be visible for Kritika here. Okay, this is what session isolation means here. It prevents data overlap between two sessions. The file saved by first user won't be visible to any other user here. It isolates the session between two users. Okay. Okay. The last thing that you can get using from a security solution is just in time or temporary access. Okay. So let's say if there is some user who has some deployment work or has some temporary work on your servers. Okay, you want that user to have the temporary access on the servers. Okay, using the security solution you can even do this. You have the capability to grant temporary access to the users. Okay, you will be having the access, you can define a date, right? And on that date the access for the user is going to expire. After that date, the user won't be able to access your servers, right? So this is how you can even provision temporary access to the users. Okay, now for this security tool, this privileged access security tool, we have some vendors here. Beyond Trust is there, CyberArk is there, Savient is there, Delinea is there, right? These are few vendors which offers privileged access security to your privileged accounts. Okay, and we have some comparison for that. Okay, uh, okay, so there is the competition is there in the market. There are tools, okay, that has done really well in last few years. For example, Beyond Trust offers similar functionalities that this CyberArk core privileged access has offer. Okay, of course there are some hiccups like Beyond Trust doesn't offer smooth customizations like CyberArk does. Okay, but yes, you have almost similar functionality in this Beyond Trust as well. Okay, similarly, if you talk about this Delinea, the integration with the governance tool is very easy. Okay, it is very straightforward with this. Okay, this allows a lot of opportunities for the automations here, right? So yeah, you have a lot of options. You can go with this, you can explore about these as well. Okay, but so far CyberArk comes up with some new updates every year, like every year or after every 6 months here. Okay, like EPM is there for workstation management, AM is there, application access management is there for non-interactive accounts, right? Conjure for cloud, right? So CyberArk is there, which offers a lot of customizations as well. It offers smooth customization. It comes with new features every time, right? So cost wise, if you see, cost wise, CyberArk is on a higher side, but yes, it offers a lot of customizations for the organizations to work with. Okay, so you can go with these security solutions. My recommendations will be for the CyberArk here.